Hello, welcome. Hey, everybody. Hope you're doing fantastic.
Hello.
Why don't we get started checking in? What's been something awesome that happened over the last month since we've met up? Everybody can throw that in the chat. My awesome thing, I lost my voice this week, but it's on the way back. So I'm glad we didn't have this meeting yesterday because I would have been making no noise whatsoever.
Ooh, exciting things afoot. Oh my gosh. So y'all gonna hang at the WIBC, right?
Ibic. It's pronounced.
How is it for
Oh, yeah, Wibbick.
Quebec?
Yeah. Yay, Wibbick people. Yeah, you guys definitely have to have a meet up at Wibbick and like take a little photo for us.
Yeah.
Throw it into our group me. That's what we have, right? Group me. We're a little inactive in the group me. We need to like get that thing going more. Oh, Alicia, what musical are you guys doing?
We're putting on Something Rotten.
Oh, that's
So yeah, we just finished playing through the whole musical and now we're just working on the big numbers. So I'm
cool.
very excited.
That's a good one for like Halloween season, right?
Right, and whoever was asking didn't respond yet. I'm conducting that musical. So.
Congratulations. Cool. All right. So thanks for the check-in, everybody. So just to go over what we're doing this session, we are going to spend the first half hour here checking in. We're going to start by looking at some of the homework questions from last week with Michelle and see kind of what that got you thinking about. So we'll kind of talk about those in the group. Then we'll move into some Q&A time. Remember, the Q&A time for this first half hour is super open. So questions for each other, questions for folks, in particular, and then that'll lead us to our 8:30 block. Unfortunately, Danielle Jagelski, our guest speaker today, had an emergency come up and she is not going to be here. However, she was awesome and pre-recorded her presentation for everyone. So we're going to watch her pre-recorded presentation. It gives her the opportunity to share her thoughts and that presentation with everyone. And we will make her email available if anyone has follow-up questions for Danielle specifically. But we'll spend our last 10 minutes Q&A time with more questions for myself, for Tanya, and we also have another guest here today, kind of last minute, but my good friend, Dr. Christine Lundahl, is here, and she is a conductor in Los Angeles. I'm actually visiting her in LA this weekend. I'm at her house. So she's here, and she can answer some questions as well. Sound good to everybody? Okay, thanks for being patient with my voice. It's doing a lot better today, fortunately. All right, so our homework that we asked you to think about and answer questions for, you don't have to turn it in, right? This is just a homework for your own benefit and sake. It's focusing on Michelle's questions from last week, thinking about what are some things to help us in becoming a conductor someday, if we aren't already, or continuing on that path. So what we are super interested in to get started with are a couple of the questions. How about typing into the chat or copying and pasting if you have your answers already written down somewhere? What are two things that you can do next to learn skills and gain experience that will set you on the path of being a conductor. So this is your kind of immediate next step question. What are some things that maybe Michelle turned you on to that you hadn't thought about before? Maybe there's some things that you have on your horizon already, or some things that you've been anxious to start doing and the conversation last month prompted you. We're very interested to hear. I'll put that in the chat as well. What are 2 things that you can do next to learn skills and gain experience that will set you on the path of being a conductor? Seeing some great answers here. Yeah, observing rehearsals is awesome, not only in school programs, but also any professional groups or community groups local. Um, a lot of times they don't know who's interested. And so you reaching out, most people I'm sure would be really happy to just let you sit in on a rehearsal and check those things out. It's totally free and you can get so much valuable vocabulary and start to see really how some of these types of rehearsals work and a lot of the great conducting gestures that you can use later on. Oh, Kendra, starting your own orchestra club or orchestra conducting club. That's awesome. What would you do in that club? Do you want to unmute Kendra and tell us a little bit about what you're thinking with that club?
Well, most of it was sparked from the ACDA club at my school. They have done conducting master classes before, and it was really cool. And I was the only instrumentalist who went to that. So either I can try to incorporate it into CWMEA or like start a whole new club of people who are more interested in just like playing for each other and getting actual experience like moving our arms. It doesn't have to be performing, it doesn't have to be anything crazy, but just like working with each other. That's what I was thinking.
That's awesome. What a great thought. Thank you for sharing. Tanya, do you see an answer here that is interesting you?
Yeah, I was just gonna reply on the chat, but Adeline was talking about, wanted to ask about rehearsal strategies with her director teacher. I'm in high school, so I don't get music ed classes in college. I like to ask my band director for the opportunity to conduct a piece with the band. I think it's so important to kind of have the courage to ask these questions. Like half the time, half the battle is just saying, "Hey, can I do that?" And then more likely than not, the answer is yes. So but if you never ask for it, the answer will always be no. So I think that's really, really cool.
Yeah, I was gonna say at my school, one of my students actually joined my band because he showed up to a band concert in the audience, but brought his baton, just like had his baton with him, and then came up on stage and introduced himself. He's like, I'm learning to be a conductor. And I'm like, cool, well, you're not in band, so come be in band. And since then, he's conducted the band a couple times. And it really also got me thinking about, well, I don't really need to be conducting every piece. I can have student conductors. And so now I make a point of trying to have as many student conductors on every concert as possible and give everybody experience, not just once, but even multiple times. So I'm really grateful that he did that because that kind of pushed me more into giving up some of that space to my students.
Yeah, and in my public school position, like I actually have student conductors. I teach all of them to conduct, but I do have student conductors, and it's really liberating in a way. But to create also that connection with your director is going to be really, really important, especially if you're thinking about going into music ed.
Great. If anybody wants to take a moment to unmute and chat a little bit more about either their idea or something you've read in the chat, we'll give you a moment to do so before we move to the next question. Okay. We will move on to one more of these questions. This one I'm super curious about. I'm gonna throw it here. It's the second to last question from the homework. It's if you could start any ensemble or musical organization, what would it be? And what would set it apart from other ensembles? So I'm pretty sure Michelle asked that question because she is the founder of Protestra. And also, all of us who are running this program founded Girls Who Conduct together back in 2020. And so we're curious, you're the next generation. What kind of things are on your horizon? What are you interested in? And pie in the sky, go as big and crazy as you want. What are you curious about? What are you interested in? And what do you think you could accomplish if you had all the resources you needed and set your mind to it? Awesome answers right out of the gate. Y'all are going to be
I would start an ensemble that was focused on like having fun and like wanting to like just improve altogether, because like at school, like we've got the younger band, which I've been trying to like just make a really good culture, and that has really improved over the course of the year. But then it would also be on like trying to improve and like push standards and try like lots of new styles and new composers and just make it like really positive, but actually make those steps forward through having fun and stuff.
give me an example of like what would some of the fun things be?
I think it's just like generally the culture. That's what I found at school as well. Is it just like being able to like laugh at yourself, like be loud and proud with mistakes, and just like it's really the culture, and then having like fun warm-ups and stuff and just making it really positive.
That's a great idea. I love that. So often, I think sometimes people forget, music is supposed to be something that makes you feel good, hopefully. Even if it's music designed to express some other, maybe more negative emotion, but it should be some sort of catharsis. And for the most part, like, yeah, fun and enjoyable. And we can forget that, especially in college when we're like focused on the grades and the juries and the solos and the concert coming up. So I love that you would take that step to the side and really focus on the enjoyment aspect. Thanks for sharing. Tanya, you see any that you want to jump in on?
There are so many beautiful ideas being, thrown into the chat. Y'all good souls.
Tanya, while you're finding one, Chloe, I see yours about folks with disabilities. Do you know about United Sound? Have you heard about that organization? You should check it out if you haven't, because they're doing something.
Not heard about them.
Yeah, check it out. It's started by a former band director, and it's mostly for like school age students in band and orchestra settings at their school, but see what they're doing and maybe that would inspire you to start kind of the thing that you're interested in doing. United Sound. I'll pull up the link here. Tanya, do you see one that you want to shout out?
All of them are so good. I would just be so curious, like, like how it would come into fruition. I like Addie's idea, an organization that collaborates between all art forms, composers collaborating with dancers or visual art, with music and poetry and acting. I think oftentimes like music becomes like this kind of art form that feels isolated sometimes, but music is everywhere. And I think that's the beautiful thing about it. I remember doing like a music tech project with my kids, and I was like, yeah, this is what happens when you like put like clown music to like Star Wars, and it's like hilarious to them, but they actually don't realize how much music like has an impact on all forms of art. So I think this would be really, really impactful and meaningful for everyone involved.
Yeah, let's
Vicky,
go
oh,
ahead.
Vicky, I'm curious about your idea. You want to teach those who are genuinely interested in music but can't afford it and are in low income areas. You provide instruments for them and help students learn free of charge. Have you heard of the El Sistema program? Okay, the El Sistema program. It's amazing. It's a program from Venezuela, in which like Dudamel actually grew up in, and you know it's I can send you more information on it, but that's exactly what they give. Yeah, and like it's been a strings thing for a while, and then it kind of like panned out into all different types of music. But it's now like can you remind me like what city you're in?
Near Chicago.
In Chicago, amazing. Okay, I'll send you the one in Chicago. I'll be in Chicago next month, so maybe we'll look at each other.
Well, I'm like
But
on the other side of like I'm on Indiana.
oh,
So
okay.
yeah.
Wait a minute, just kidding. That's awesome. But yeah, like there's El Sistema programs and they provide instruments and all these things. So this is something that you can totally be a part of, and you know there would be a lot to learn there.
Thank you so much. This is amazing.
Christy, I saw that you posted a link for an ensemble. This would be a great a chance for you to introduce yourself, since you are kind of like a last minute surprise guest mentor visiting that I'm visiting today. So why don't you introduce yourself and share a little bit about the group that you just posted about?
Hi, everybody. I'm Christy, and we're in separate rooms right now, so apologies with the audio if there's any issues. But so I am a conductor in LA. I just moved here this past year. I was a band director in Oregon for a little bit, but I'm originally from Florida. I lived in Florida most of my life, but don't hold that against me. We're just as crazy as they all say. But so the ensemble that I found out about yesterday was really neat. We were doing a Zoom with the founder, and I realized that he lives in Chicago, and I just clicked on the link, and they're actually based out of Milwaukee. So this ensemble, they were formed a couple years ago, and they respond whenever there is a shooting in Milwaukee in the area. They are the first ones on the scene beside the police and the folks that are already there. They go and they provide comforting music to the people that are on scene at shooting sites. And so the music they choose is specifically to help through the 5 stages of grief. And so they choose different orchestral music that kind of helps people through the stages of grief in real time while it's happening. And there's actually a PBS documentary about it that's really, really fascinating, but it's mostly made of Black and Latinx musicians, and they play music by those types of POC composers as well. And it's just fascinating to see, especially the documentary that kind of goes through just the mission that they have and what they're doing. And I just thought it was so unique. I'd never heard anything like it before, and I think it's really important. So check it out. It's pretty cool. But I wanted to say I was reading through all of your answers as well, and you guys have just some brilliant minds, and there's some really wonderful ideas that you have. So thank you so much, Caitlin, for having me as a guest on here. It's my pleasure to be here.
Thank you, Christy. It looks like somebody asked in the chat, Axel asked, what was the documentary called? If maybe you could find a link for it. Thank you. All right. Great discussion. I'm feeling so inspired. We're going to take the next 10 minutes before we move into our building confidence session with Danielle Jagelski's pre-recorded video to open it up for your Q&A time. So let's take a little time. If you got a burning question, something came up for you this month, you asked a question last month that didn't get answered yet, Tanya does have a whole running list of those. So maybe Tanya, you could start with one of those while the rest of us start thinking about some questions.
Yeah, let's
And
do
these
it.
questions can be for everyone. So if you have a great answer for a question, feel free to chime in. It's not just for the mentors.
Absolutely. And remember that if there's any questions that you don't want to ask yourself, feel very free to private message me, and then I'll ask on your behalf. But I love this question. How did you get started gaining experience with conducting, ensemble leading, or ensemble leading an ensemble? Caitlin, you want to take us off? Kick us off?
Sure. My first conducting experience was my high school pep band. And I still conduct a pep band. I love pep bands so much. If pep band were a full-time job and it wasn't just football and you didn't have to be outside all the time, then I would love that job. But pep band was a great opportunity for me because I also feel like there's a lot of energy in pep band and like you're kind of dancy when you're conducting. And so I think that's part of my like conducting brand is that I'm like very high energy and a bit dancy when I conduct. And that's from my roots in the pep band.
You're the danciest, Caitlin. I love it. So I always talk about my conducting. I think I'm a teacher first. I feel like, I feel like conducting chose me. Um, I really wasn't meant to go and like, I didn't like sought it out, but a position opened up at Manhattan School of Music pre-college. And I was like, sure, why not? I'll apply. And I eventually got the job. And from there, like, I think I just started taking conducting very, very seriously at a much later age than you are all now, at a strapping 24. So, I think for me, I think, just starting it can happen at any point in your life. And if you're wondering, like, is it too late? No, the answer is no, it's not too late. In fact, you're doing exactly the right things and you're in exactly the right place for that. Does anybody have a story to share about how they got started in conducting? Annie, go ahead.
Hi, when you said like you felt like conducting chose you, I resonated with that so much. I was like, yes, because I felt the same way. Um, my old director of choirs at where I go to school, she's left now, but I remember there was one time in one of our like lab choirs, they were letting undergraduates get up and conduct. And I got up and I don't even remember what I did. I don't remember what I conducted, but I just did what I wanted to do. And I was like, here's what I want it to sound like, whatever. And I did it. And my director looked at me and she goes, Annie, you're a conductor. And I sat there in that moment and I was like, oh, I found it. I was like, so like, it was just like such a good moment for me. And I had another really good moment today in my instrumental conducting class. Um, Too, where I was like, oh, like, yeah, this is it. So, yeah, I really resonated with that when you said that.
Awesome. Adeline. Is it Adeline or Adeline? Just I want to make sure.
It's Adeline.
Okay, perfect. I was right.
So when I was getting into conducting, I'd say it started when the other year there was a student conductor in my youth orchestra and I watched her conduct and I was like, it would be so cool to be a young student like her conducting. And so the next day in band, I think I was in 7th or 8th grade, I asked my band director, I was like, can you like show me the basics? And he did. And then I would like start practicing on my own. It definitely got kickstarted when, not this past summer, but the previous summer, I went to Wazoo Music Camp and I took a conducting elective with Dr. Pham. And that was just really fun to get some time from him to get feedback on my conducting. I remember he went to the on campus Panda to get chopsticks for all of us to use as a baton. And that was so funny. And so I just remember that. And that was kind of how I got into it. And that time with Dr. Pham was like, I think this is what I want to do.
I'm obsessed. I'm gonna have to tell him, hey, I didn't know you were handing out Panda Express chopsticks as Hans over there at Wazoo.
Awesome. Caitlin.
Hello. Um, I've always thought conducting is really interesting, and I started in band, and then I did choir stuff and like watching all the different ways they do it. But it wasn't until one of my good friends was like, "Oh, we had a piano player drop. Can you be in my pit?" And I watched him conduct. And this was in college, so after seeing all this, and I watched him conduct, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, I want this job! Like this looks so fun." So the next year, I applied for that job, and I got it, and I was like, whoa. So then I took a conducting class because I was on track to be like to do opera stuff. And then I randomly one day in the summer was like, I just feel like I should stop doing all the opera stuff and like try to be an MD. And then I like took out a bunch of my classes and did conducting as one of them. And then I was like, wait, this is so awesome. And it was so inspiring and cool, and like made so many good friends through it. So it became like someone else's inspiration of bringing me into a project kind of backroad inspired me. So yeah.
Zoe.
So I like my first experience with conducting was like the final step. I know that sounds so weird, but like I was observing my conductor and like my friends in my program in the pit orchestra for Into the Woods. And the final number was happening and like the whole like cast was like standing like they did like a wall of sound at the end and like, they were all like belting. And I was like recording. I was like, this is so cool. My conductor was like come here, and I was like, oh my god, what? And he like made me stand on the podium and conduct the rest of the closer, and I was like freaking out, not gonna lie. And then that was the coolest moment. It was like the moment where I was like, oh my gosh, this is the school where I meant to be, like this is what I want to do. And I had that like moment where I was like, yes. So then afterwards, like I've been hungry for that moment again, so I've just been like taking all the classes and like getting all the opportunities to like piano conduct and like doing all the other things to like get to that point again, because I remember that feeling was like so cool, and I can't wait to do that again where I like have the knowledge to make it sound amazing and like be in control. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, absolutely. All right, Alex, this is the last story, then we'll go to the next question.
Hi, everyone. So, my first intro to conducting was kind of pleasant and also kind of frustrating. I was at a summer camp, and long story short, we had like 48 hours. It was a competition between the boys and the girls of camp, and we had to write basically like an alma mater, kind of like an anthem. So I wrote it and I orchestrated it. I ended up having like 30 musicians. It was like 14 parts or something. Might have been more than 30. Anyways, I had to conduct it. I had never conducted in my entire life, and I'm a piano player, so I don't have loads of ensemble experience. I have more now, but at the time I didn't have much. And I kind of got up, and we had like a half hour to rehearse, and it kind of flopped, and I was really frustrated, so I had to call the bass player to come and conduct it. But it was in that moment that I was like, I can't figure out how to do this now, and I do not have the time to figure it out, but I want to do this. And then a week later at the same camp, I got to play in a pit orchestra for ragtime, and the way I felt, I've never felt like that in my life before. And I was like, I need to continue doing this for the rest of my life.
Profound. It's nice to find little, joy and little meaning in our experiences. I love that. Thank you for sharing, everybody. We have a couple just only a couple, but if anybody has any question that they want to pitch to the group, all right, Julia, go ahead.
So I don't know how related this is to conducting specifically, but my school kind of student government, it's called student faculty, and basically the students pitch ideas to the faculty about events and stuff. And we were talking about doing events for like Hispanic Heritage Month, for AAPI Month, for Black History Month, and I am Asian, and I pitched the idea to do an AAPI month concert because there are a lot of students, not only Asian American, but from Asia that are at my school. And I was wondering if any of you have ever programmed or conducted or participated in a concert that's dedicated to heritage, kind of how you go about that.
I love this question.
Can I give an answer?
Go ahead.
So we at my college they have like I think either an annual or semester like Colors of Rhythm festival where different like groups perform like dances or music or songs from like their respective cultures. And in my taiko group at my college, we specifically decided we want to like feature our players who identify as people of color. So that's just something I like to keep in mind when I'm doing stuff like this. And also my group doesn't have that many, so it was really nice to play a lot more.
Caitlin, you want to take it and then I'll take it after?
Me?
Yeah, you go
Okay.
first.
Yeah, so I love that. I think next year I'm planning on also doing an AAPI Heritage Month concert, but I'll just share real quick. Last year I did a Hispanic Heritage Month concert, and what I was really conscientious of is like, first of all, I am not Hispanic, so really checking in with the students in my group and my ensemble and my community to make sure that I'm going about it in the most authentic and representative way. I made sure that when we were collecting a repertoire of music to perform, that it was from a wide swath of history, so modern music and historic music, as well as from lots of different countries and cultures. We still included like a concerto and other stuff that you might expect, like a march, stuff you would expect to maybe see on a concert. So it wasn't all just like one niche, like that kind of maybe an expected kind of music, something maybe more like in the lanes of being stereotypical. So just like showing that there's a wide breadth of music from any culture. And then what I really enjoyed about what we did is we brought a mariachi in and they performed half a set on their own, and we finished the whole program with a piece for the band and the mariachi together. I also got the rights to and wrote a medley of Selena music, and then I had one of my vocalists in our music program come out and sing along with the band, and that brought out a ton of audience, and they like were dancing and like singing along, and it was like a big Selena sing along. And she even like got an outfit that looked like the Houston Astrodome outfit she wore for like that big famous like music video. So we just tried to like touch a whole lot of different aspects and make sure that it was relevant to as many people in that community as possible, while still being welcoming to people who are outside that community, so they feel like they get to be a part of it and learn. In the lobby, we had an ofrenda because it was October, and so we were able to kind of teach people about like the ofrenda tradition. The band members brought in ofrenda items that would represent some of their past loved ones, and then we encouraged the audience to write little notes about their loved ones, like things they remembered, and then add those items to the ofrenda. So it became something that was for the band performing and for the audience. So we got it a whole bunch of different ways. Hopefully that helps with some ideas.
Yeah. And I just kind of want to piggyback off of that. So as a person who's Thai, like oftentimes when I go to these AAPI thing, it's often representing Chinese, Korean, and Japanese. I often have a difficult time like processing it because I'm like, I don't I don't fit into this at all. And so I haven't done an API concert, but I have done I'm like actually the founder of like the University of Rochester's AAPI affinity network. So in that space, like what I'm trying to do is actually, impart more of the AAPI culture than like that are kind of like what's considered like peripheral. For example, Filipinos have this wonderful dance and like, their costumes and all of these things. So I actually like, created like a whole thing in a museum where there's different rooms that they can go to and experience different music and dance for these different cultures. So I was particularly proud of that, and being able to kind of also like as part of the Asian culture, we love food. That is our love language. So part of the different rooms that they get to walk into is also like different desserts that they get to experience. So I particularly love that. But I want you to be really, really careful, and like it's okay to ask these questions. Is that who are you representing? It's important, like Caitlin says, like to represent the people that are in the community, but it's also like the idea of like welcoming everybody else is so, so, so important, because you never know who's going to be like that single person that's going to walk in and be like, wow, I'm not part of this. You know what I mean? I have found that also AAPI sometimes is very a little off-putting to especially like Indians. I wanted to be very, very vocal about that as well, because that's what I found in creating this affinity network, is that you want to kind of like literally go and like do research on like who are all the potential like potential cultures, and then kind of bring them in. So If you want to talk more about that, you know, I would be very, very happy to just shoot me an email. And of course, you know, Caitlin is always here as well, because she's, you know, into the other side of it as well. So just let us know. But I hope that gives you some kind of some good things to think about. All right. So Chloe and Kendra, I know you have questions. I'm going to table you for now because it's time for our video. Is that right, Caitlin? Okay, all right. She's giving me two thumbs up, not just one. Brilliant. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and start our video. Do you have anything to say before the video start, Caitlin?
I'm all good. I'm just coughing over here.
As it goes. All right, brilliant. Okay. Everybody grab your favorite snack and your favorite drink. Here we go. I'm gonna ask you in about 2 seconds if the sound is on.
Hello, everyone. My name is Danielle Jagelski, and I am a conductor and composer and creative producer. And I'm so sorry that I can't be there with you live today. I had an unavoidable conflict, but I figured Tanya and Caitlin had a wonderful idea to just record something, and then they can lead discussions and answer questions and everything like that. So I'm so grateful to be with you here asynchronously. A little bit about me, like I said, I'm Danielle Jagelski, and I'm a composer, conductor, and creative producer. My main gigs are being the artistic director and founder of Renegade Opera, which is based in Portland, Oregon, and being the lead producer for First Nations Performing Arts, which is an arts organization in Lenapehoking, also known as New York City, where I am the producer and plan all their concerts, events, and everything like that. I'm also on faculty at Manhattan School of Music pre-college and do a bunch of different things, big freelance, stuff. And I also write a lot of music. And so I guess I'll jump in. Our lesson today is about building confidence, which is probably, in my opinion, like probably second on the list of being a good conductor. Like, you have to be a good musician to be a conductor, but you also have to be confident. To me, that comes above technique because, for example, you can practice all your technique, but if you're not confident, you can't execute it. So that's why I think it's important. So let's move on to objectives. So the objectives today are to understand performance anxiety, how we can recognize it, and also tools on how to control it. To do that, we will work on perceiving a task as a challenge versus a threat. We'll build awareness of cognitive distortions and negative self-talk. And we'll talk a lot about excitement over fear. And this lesson can sometimes bring up a lot of feelings because when it comes to our self-confidence, y'all know what I'm talking about. So if you need to take a break or step out anytime, totally feel free to do that. And if you need to come back, I mean, this is a video, so you can just rewind later. Okay, so your anxiety is calling you. That's just funny. I like these GIFs that you can now do in Google Slides. So yeah, performance anxiety. What is it? It's nervousness experienced before or during a participation of an activity taking place in front of an audience. So let's do a poll now. What are some symptoms of performance anxiety that you have experienced before a performance or rehearsal? Or this can also be before a presentation at school or a speech, anytime you're in front of a audience or a group of people, or perhaps even one person. And so Tanya and Caitlin, you can just pause the video now and take a poll.
I'm not taking a poll, I'm participating.
Sweaty palms. I'm dead. Racing thoughts, twitch, dizziness. Last year when I conducted at Carnegie Hall, I was like, all right, everybody, go warm up. And I was just in the bathroom. I was like, ah! Cry. Oh, Annie, me too. We can cry together. Extra vibrato. Ah. Amazing. We are going to work through this, fam. Here we go. All right. Y'all see it again, right?
So let's continue on to, or continue with performance anxiety. And so now I think would be a great time to have a discussion. I'm sure the discussion already started flowing when we were throwing out all of our symptoms that have happened before a performance rehearsal or presentation. And now I want you to think of a recent performance that did not go as well as expected. And that can either be as a conductor or as a musician, whichever way. And then after you kind of pick one of those, because we all have them, let's be honest, think about what you were feeling in your body. Think about how you were feeling physically. And after that, think about what was going through your mind mentally. And think about then what those are feeling like during the performance. So we've talked about what happened before, and now we're talking about what happened during. So some possible answers, to get you started off is, for instance, like blanking out, like a memory slip. So yeah, you can pause the video again and do a quick discussion on what you were feeling in your body and your mind during a performance that wasn't going as well as you would like it to.
So just to clarify, our last poll was asking us like that anxiety prior to something making us nervous. And now we're talking about how we were feeling in the moment if there was something that was going on that wasn't going as well as we wanted it to. Does that sound right, Tanya? Great.
Caitlin, what do you think about when you're nervous? I find that sometimes I think like I'm like worried about how people will think of me. It's like, oh my God, like, are my pants okay? Do I look okay from the back? Is my hair okay? Like, I don't know. Do you get that?
I'm probably the wrong person to ask. I like don't feel nervousness anymore, but I'm on like some like hormone medication. So I think that's like that like blocked the part of my physiology that feels nervousness. So maybe Christy can answer that question.
Hey, send help.
Yeah, I agree with Caitlin, actually. I think once you do it enough, it just you just lose the nervousness and you realize what you're doing with the music is what people are actually listening to and not focusing as much on yourself. So I do remember back when I used to get nervous, I lost any focus on what was important. And so I resonate with quite a bit of what everybody's saying, focusing a lot on myself and not on the task at hand, which was elevating the music.
That is something that I've heard too. Like if you go to a party and you're like, oh my God, are people gonna notice, that my shirt, they don't like my shirt or whatever. And we have to remember that human beings, like most of us, are a little bit self-involved and self-obsessed, and we think like everybody's looking at us and everybody's noticing us, but we're all thinking that, and we're actually not really that focused on everybody else. So when part of that nervousness, if you're like, oh no, everyone's looking at me or judging me, like just remember most everybody else is also nervous about how they're being perceived and not perceiving you. So that can sometimes help you get over that thought, is that everyone's in the same boat as you.
It's true. All right, we're gonna keep going.
Okay, so now let's move on to understanding what's happening scientifically. So I feel like gaining this kind of knowledge can give us a little bit of control over how we can learn to embrace these things that are happening within our body. So the autonomic nervous system is your nervous system. Simply, it's the nervous system in your body that is in charge of your awareness, and it doesn't involve thinking. It's the uncontrollable things that happen in your body. So when we were talking before, I'm sure we said like sweating. So for example, you can't just tell your body necessarily to like, oh, sweat. Like if it's hot, you're gonna sweat. You can like try to meditate it out, but like really it's kind of an uncontrollable thing. You're breathing, how you breathe, you will naturally breathe. That's that's part of your autonomic nervous system. And so in this graphic that I have here, it just talks about different parts of the spinal cord. And so in the ventral vagal pathway, we respond to cues of safety and support and feeling socially connected. And so in this pathway, this is where you will find like happiness, like these kind of positive emotions. And then we have the sympathetic nervous system, which is kind of the most common one that I feel like is talked about on like TikTok, or if you're on like psychology TikTok, that you might have heard a lot about the sympathetic nervous system. And so this is like the middle part of our spinal cord that prepares for action. So this is like, if you're in danger, this is what's going to make you feel like twitchy or like on the edge, you know, like I always think of like a rabbit, like if they hear something, they do that, right? And then we get down to the dorsal, and this is like the most extreme. So this is like when something would happen that you don't even have control over. So if something scares you, the movement, like rather than the feeling, it's like the movement that happens. And so all these physical things, even though we're not necessarily in control in the moment, or we're not in control in the moment, however, we can train our mind to how we respond to different stimuli. So we can train our nervous system of which part it is going to react and how we're going to react when we feel a sense of intensity, danger, what will trigger our nervous system is our fear versus excitement, our fight, flight, freeze, or fawn response. And so let's talk about this a little bit. So the fight, flight, or freeze, or fawn, which has been added on relatively recently, you're probably pretty familiar with, right? Like if you have a threat, then your body is going to react probably in one of these 4 ways. And so in a performance, obviously there's not a direct physical threat. There's not like somebody coming at you, like ready to punch you in the face. However, our body does not feel a difference, does not have a difference between a physical threat and an emotional threat or a psychological threat. The body still responds as if it's threatened. And so let's kind of just go through these 4 responses. Fight, obviously, we kind of know what that is. So if something's fight, you will feel a protectiveness, like a physical protectiveness that you need. That could be like wanting to move more, to just like to stay there, get a like really maybe fighting with a player, honestly, like if somebody is coming at you and you kind of get in this nervous type of state, and then you're kind of like spewing things out of your mouth that you don't really want to say. And this, I think this happens to a lot of people. It definitely happened to me as a young conductor. And flight is the sensation of wanting to get away. I think we're familiar with that. So something's not going so well, you're like, oh my God, get me off this podium as quick as possible. And going back to fight can also be a feeling of a desperation to get it over with. So just to like plow forward. I feel like that is also a fight response. And freeze is also easily to explain, right? We freeze up. Maybe you're not able to walk on the stage. Maybe your brain is freezing. So that's when you get like a major memory slip or even a disassociation. So when you're up there performing and you can't feel your body, you're like, okay, what's happening here? Like that type of disassociative moment, that's part of the freeze. And then the fourth one, the fawn, I feel like this one is kind of nuanced. So forgive me for blabbing about it. But so to fawn, I feel like especially as non-men conductors, we can, because of the way that we're socialized, we can really fall into this one. So to fawn, to feel the need to please everybody. So it could look like agreeing with what everybody says. So you have a player that says something that you don't necessarily agree with, or maybe they're literally just like speaking out of turn, or they're trying to take over your rehearsal. They're putting you in a difficult spot, or nobody's even said something to you, but you're just up there and you're in a you're in an elevated sense within your body. So, and you feel like you need to please people. You're like, oh yeah, that's exactly right, even though you know it's not exactly right. Or it can also look like that you feel like you can't talk directly with people without being like a rude conductor or something. Or it could even be right now, I feel like perhaps I'm even feeling a little bit of the fawn because I'm trying to do this great presentation for you guys. I'm like, oh, I want to share my knowledge, but I'm not super confident. I'm just talking to my computer right now. So even that, like even a little bit of fawning, like not being aware of your timing of your rehearsal. I think that can also be like a fawn mixed with a freeze, kind of things like that. And so common threats that trigger these responses can be overestimating your chance of failing in a performance. So you are elevating those feelings, those kind of negative feelings. Also overestimating the difficulty of the performance. So not being confident within the knowledge that you've gained by rehearsing and studying, etc. And then one that I think is really important is overestimating the consequences of a potential failure. So what happens if you kind of F up the performance? Like what really happens? We're not doing brain surgery, but obviously we care so much about this music. And so, sure, there are consequences, but are those consequences, what are external and what are internal? What do we put on ourselves and how is this actually going to affect our career, right? So obviously there's more intense situations, less intense situations. So you're with your orchestra that you know really well, full of your friends. If a rehearsal doesn't go so well, then it's kind of like, do we get really down on ourselves for that? Do we choose to overestimate the consequences versus you're in a competition? It's the final round. Obviously, there are some consequences for that. But I think at the end of the day, okay, you lose a competition. What's next? You join another one. And then I also feel like another very important common threat that can trigger these responses is underestimating your ability to cope with the demands of the performance. So underestimating, saying like, oh my God, I'm going to be so nervous. I'm going to freeze up. I'm going to rush. I'm going to do, underestimating your ability to control your confidence and to control your musicianship.
All right, we're gonna take a 10-minute break, everybody. Okay, so rebalance all your fluids. All right, we'll come back at Eastern time 9:05. Does that sound good, Caitlin? All right, cool.
Everybody get some jumping jacks in.
Yes.
I don't know why, but like doing a Zoom versus sitting in a class, like in person, is so much more draining. So I'm glad we have this break. See you guys in 10. Did everybody get kicked off of the Zoom? Or was it just me? Okay, great. Yay.
All right, ready to continue. Hope you have your favorite drink in hand.
And so now that we've learned a little bit about the brain, let's relate it back again to conducting. So I just want to say that we perform like we practice. So the body, the nervous system gets used to the way that we feel when we are doing music, whether it's in rehearsal, personal practice, or in performance. And so if you notice yourself getting a sense of losing control, a sense of anxiety while you're rehearsing, like you're like, oh my God, I'm doing Stravinsky for the first time, these multimeters, like, oh my God, it's so crazy. But rather than looking at it as a challenge and an excitement of learning this music, even while you're alone, that is going to help you once you're in front of people. So be in control, or be not even in control, be aware of how you're feeling while you're studying, while you're rehearsing alone, while you're rehearsing with a couple people, with your friends, literally while you're talking about it to your mentor or to your classmates, to your colleagues. Talk about how you're excited. Don't talk about how you're nervous. Like, of course, getting these emotions out is very important, but remember that the body doesn't know the difference between excitement and anxiety. So kind of choose what's best for you in that state. If the body is operating in an amplified state, we can choose excitement over anxiety. So now let's move on a little bit to how we can recognize these, how we can make that choice between anxiety and excitement. Something that has helped me a lot is talking to that little voice in your head. So we're talking about negative and positive self-talk and cognitive distortions. So the little voice in your head that makes statements about what's going on in your life, those are your self-talk. Those are you talking to yourself. And common symptoms of performance anxiety I've heard from musicians, particularly women and non-binary folks, is imposter syndrome and negative self-talk when they enter into a fear response rather than an excitement response. So negative self-talk is when the voice inside your head is making statements or commentary about you that are negative, and these tend to be automatic thoughts. So they pop into your head like seemingly without your control. And some examples of this that may be relevant for music or for conducting and maybe for life is I don't belong here. No one supports me in my goals. I'm going to mess this up and I'm going to look like an idiot. And I cannot make this mistake or any mistakes, otherwise my career is over. So negative self-talk is fucking brutal, honestly. It's awful. And so I think if there's one thing we can do to build our confidence is to build relationship with ourselves and to really talk, to really think about and to really take control over the thoughts that we have about ourselves. And so negative self-talk can generally be categorized into 10 common categories that we're going to call cognitive distortions, which are called cognitive distortions. And so here's the main 10 cognitive distortions. And this week, when you are home and walking around life, try to just recognize the self-talk, recognize the negative self-talk, what just pops in, and then maybe try to categorize it. And after that, we'll get on to how we can try to change that. So let's just go through the first one, all or nothing feeling, or all or nothing thinking. When you see things in black and white instead of shades of gray. So for example, I'm a bad person. I always mess this up. I am a bad conductor. I don't ever run a good rehearsal. 2, overgeneralization. When you extend a negative thought so that it reaches even further. So, for example, you make a mistake and then you say, I never do anything right, rather than just saying you made one mistake. 3 can be a mental filter. When you filter out all the good stuff and focus on the bad. So this one is so powerful for musicians because we don't necessarily practice, we aren't encouraged to practice the good things, right? Like in order to use our time wisely, we have to practice the bad things. And so we're constantly going through our own head. Okay, in this excerpt, what did I do wrong? What did I do wrong? What did I do wrong? And how often do we think about what did I do right? 4, disqualifying the positive. When you believe a good or positive thing doesn't count towards the larger pattern of failure and negativity. So for example, I guess I survived the talk. Even broken clocks are right twice a day. So I guess I survived that rehearsal. Well, that's not something that usually happens very often. 5, jumping to conclusions. When you extrapolate an even bigger and broader negative thought from a small negative experience. So, for example, he said, you didn't want to go out with me. I must be an unlovable person. I had one bad interaction during my rehearsal. I must be a terrible conductor. I must not be meant for this career. Or I'm a quieter person. I'm more introverted. There's no way I can be a conductor. Magnification or minimization. When you exaggerate your own mistakes or you exaggerate people's accomplishments or happiness. The biggest thing that we can relate to in like modern day with this is Instagram. So everybody's like Instagram life of perfect everything. That is magnification and minimization. And so to keep that, to not have that awareness that that's not real life, or if you think that you're the only one making these mistakes, that's magnification or minimization. 7, emotional reasoning. You assume your negative feelings reflect the truth. I felt embarrassed, therefore I must have been acting in an embarrassed manner. So for example, oh my God, I conducted a 3/4 bar when I was supposed to conduct a 4/4 bar. The orchestra thinks I don't know this music, or like, oh my God, everybody noticed that. So you're like emotional reasoning with yourself. And 8, should statements. Should statements are tricky also because we're musicians. So you beat yourself up for not doing things differently. With the nature of live music, we get that one chance, right? Like we get that one chance while we're playing or while we're conducting, while we're singing to quote unquote get it right. And so when we don't, I should have taken a different tempi there. I should have thought about this differently. 9, labeling and mislabeling. When you use a small negative event or feeling to give yourself a huge general label. Example, I forgot to do the report. I'm a total idiot. And I think we can all kind of relate to this one. I didn't study enough. I am going to like mess up this rehearsal. I'm going to mess up this thing. For example, I didn't manage my calendar well enough. I'm such a disorganized person. 10, personalizations. When you make things personal that aren't. This is a very important one for conductors as well. So for example, somebody asks a question about the music. What are we doing at that fermata? You could, rather than, I think a lot of younger conductors and older conductors, all conductors, somebody asks something like that, they think, oh my God, like I'm not clear. And maybe that player wasn't watching, maybe you weren't clear, whatever, but it doesn't have to be personal. So there are also some special considerations for diverse groups, and we can talk about this a little bit. And yeah, so what if the challenges you're facing are out of your control? So sexism, racism, bullying, etc., etc. And when it comes to discrimination, there's casual and there's also overt discrimination, and both are unacceptable. So overt discrimination is the stuff that's obvious, right? Like people not getting a job because of the type of person they are, etc. Casual, these are what you guys probably know as like microaggressions. And you don't need to, quote unquote, take this discrimination to further your career. I feel like we're all lucky living in a world that is much better than it was 30 years ago to non-men people in music, but it still absolutely exists. So what you can do internally is be kind and to love yourself. I know we say that all the time, but it's always a good reminder. And then you can also find a community for support. So to know that you're not the only one that's feeling this, or to bounce it off of somebody that you know, even if you have a question, because I think sometimes with a discrimination, the hardest part is like the doubt, right? Being like, was that discrimination? Am I taking it too personally, right? Like, am I going back to number 10, personalization? Or is this actually discrimination? And that it's so important to have a community that can weigh that out with you and can support you when you need that. And externally, if you're experiencing these things that are really like going into your confidence and like breaking down your confidence, make sure that you're documenting these. Even just little notes, personal notes that you write to yourself can be really helpful. Emails, texts, etc. And if you feel safe and you want to address the situation with the person directly or the organization directly, like you can absolutely do that. And you can also always go to like the quote unquote higher ups if you're in a larger organization, if you have one, like human resources, the executive director, the board. And then I have a little picture here. This is Elizabeth Rowe, who was the Boston Symphony principal flutist. And she found out because Boston didn't have very good transparency in how much they were paying their musicians. And then she found out that she was being paid $70,000 less than the other principal woodwind players, who were all men. And so she took it upon herself to fight the Boston Symphony Orchestra, and she won. And now she's has a coaching program. She's actually left the BSO. She's left performing. She's left having a position, and she focuses on equity and coaching, confidence, and coaching career with musicians. And I think she's a great example of being a leader within saying, wow, this isn't right. Like she had the confidence to be like, I deserve this 70K that they're stealing from me, basically. And so she's just a super cool person to check out. You can add her on Instagram. And okay, so let's move on to how we can kind of battle these cognitive distortions. Beep, beep, beep. So when we have the cognitive distortions, it's affecting our body. We feel ourselves having these reactions. We're sweating, we're shaky, we're breathing quickly. So we first have to recognize it, which we talked about earlier. So for instance, a performance situation, the heartbeat is quickening. The self-talk can be, my heart is going so crazy, I'm losing control, I'm not going to perform well. And the consequence, you lose control and you maybe give a bad performance. However, the performance situation, the heartbeat is quickening before performance. You can say, my heart is beating faster than normal. I will keep focused on my breathing and I'll be fine. You can even say like the heartbeat means that I'm really excited and that this is a potential to really dive into this music. And then the consequence could be that you maintain control and give a good performance. So here's an awesome quote by a dancer about fear versus excitement. So she says, I began to discriminate between fear and excitement. The two, though very close, are completely different. Fear is negative excitement, choking your imagination. Real excitement produces energy that overcomes apprehension and makes you want to close in on your goal. Anxiety is normal, basically, is what kind of all this is about, and is needed in order to really dive into those emotions and to really dive into art, into this like very nebulous thing. Like anxiety is nebulous, but so is art, so is music. So they honestly belong together, and it's such a tool that we can use to take that challenge and to really, really show what we're passionate about and what we can do. So that's what I have for you. Here's Beyonce being confident. So thank you so much. And please feel free to reach out to me via email. I also have a website. If you lose my email, you can just, contact me through my website. And yeah, I hope you guys have a super continuous, super awesome discussion with this, and keep really thinking about your confidence and about how awesome you are, and just that I hope you can come to a sense that you have to give your art to the world, because if you don't give it, then you're technically taking it away. Then you're depriving us of what you can bring and what you can do, and building your confidence is going to make you do that in the fullest way. And it's also going to allow you to keep on growing as an artist throughout your whole life. So thank you so much. I'm so yeah, I'm so grateful to be here with you asynchronously, and I hope to be in touch with you all soon. Bye bye.
Let's all send great energy to Danielle wherever she is. That's great. Hopefully you learned a lot. Anybody want to write into the chat maybe like one cool takeaway or thing or fact or idea that Danielle shared that you want to incorporate into your own thinking and philosophy right away? These are awesome. Thanks so much for sharing what you got out of it. Keep posting into the chat, but Tanya, if you want to take the last 7-8 minutes here, we're going to move into our final open Q&A time. Typically, this would be for our guest presenter. Danielle's not with us today, unfortunately. So you do have Christine Lundahl here, who's a guest for today, as well as myself and Tanya. If you have any questions specifically for the mentors, those of us who are here to support you all, if you have some advice questions or resource questions or other things you've been thinking about, we'd be happy to answer those for you for the next few minutes until we hit our end time.
I have a question that's got tabled from last week. That's perfect. Last week. Oh my gosh, last month. That is perfect for this topic. Here's the question. I was wondering what advice you had to help me as a pre-professional and female student conductor overcome the social obstacle of worrying about how players and others perceive me on the podium. I constantly find myself holding back on expressing the music and on using more power in my conducting, as I worry that I look weird or that the players, people around my age, would find me overbearing. Christy, I'm going to invite you to start us off.
Yeah, thank you. I think it's a great question and something I'm sure all of us in this chat right now have experienced at some point, worrying about how others are going to perceive us or us feeling weird. And what I have found grounds me the most when I'm feeling that anxiety, and that I take with me every time I get on the podium, is the knowledge that the people that are there with me want me to be successful. Because when I'm successful, the music is successful. And so more than anything, there's positivity in the room constantly, wherever I go. And for all of you as well, ensemble, you are all players, you're all singers. When you're in an ensemble, you want your conductor to be successful. And so remember that when you're in that position, how you feel when you're on the other side. You want them to be successful, because when they're successful, the music is successful. Another thing I like to think of that really helps me with my anxiety is knowing that I have an opportunity to be a role model to, especially as women and non-binary folk. You have a really special opportunity to be a role model for the other people that identify with that in your ensemble. So when you're successful, again, you're showing them just another model of success. And also for the men in my ensemble as well. It's important for them to see someone successful. And so I find that I have this excitement to show what success could look like, because again, there are so few of us in this profession. So I derive a lot of joy and excitement out of just finding that more important than what I feel my own presence in that space at that moment. It's bigger than that. The art is bigger than that, and what I'm capable of providing as far as inspiration is more important than my anxiety in that moment.
Yay. Caitlin? Oh, Caitlin, you want to go?
That was great. I would love to move on to another question.
Amazing. Let's do Kendra.
That's sort of on the lines of what we were just talking about. I was asked to conduct an ensemble at my school, and it's an all brass ensemble, and I'm a string player. So I already feel way out of my own world conducting this piece. But then to top it all off, it's all peers in my year or the year above me. So how can I balance asking for what I want, not asking for something ridiculous that I'm not aware of because I'm not a brass player, and managing the environment so that we can all have a productive time together, because we had a rehearsal last week and it was crazy, and I don't want to do that again, but I don't know what I can do to help with that.
I would love to take this one. A couple things. So Kendra, I haven't seen you conduct. So just off the bat, make sure you're breathing a lot with your conducting, like doing a physical breath, to bring the musicians in, trying to breathe along with the phrasing. I could breathe like a player while I'm conducting, like even through just lines. So practicing that, so you're kind of jumping in with them. Doing a lot of research on the history, performance practice, the artists, the composers. So you can kind of come in maybe with some like extra little knowledge that the players probably don't have, like about the piece or about the composers, just to show that you've done research. And then what I would try to do is try to use more generic language if you're trying to adjust something in rehearsal, and then defer to the expertise of the musicians. So say, hey, trumpets, I would love to hear this part more light. What could you do on, like, what do you guys think? How, like, and maybe defer to maybe the principal player on that, in that section. Like, what do you, like, what's the technique? Tell everybody else. So you're controlling the situation and kind of guiding where the rehearsal's going, but deferring to their expertise, which I'm sure they would appreciate. And it gives them a chance to be participants and like show that they have knowledge and they can contribute too. So I would do more of that. And maybe Christy, if you want to jump in, since you are a brass primary, if you have any more targeted advice.
Yeah, no, that was fantastic targeted advice for just brass players in particular. I wanted to say, as a brass player, I work with an orchestra. And what I like to do at the beginning of, when I first work with an orchestra for the first time, I like to say, I speak brass better than I speak strings, but we all speak music. And so if you can kind of let them know that you speak music, and I like to tell them too, hey, if I'm asking for anything crazy right now, please raise your hand and tell me, because I speak brass. And so if you string players could help me with something, and if you say that to the brass players love to offer their advice. They're full of advice. So they would feel really comfortable doing that. And you can just say, hey, I'm here to work with the music. And if I'm saying something silly, please just let me know. And like, they will let the comfort in the room come forward a little bit more, and just show that, no, you don't know everything, but that's totally okay. And you're there to help them.
Thank you, Christy. Caitlin, I tabled the other questions, so you can wrap us up. Caitlin?
Sorry, I had you muted. Can you say it one more time? Because I'm trying to work with Christy being in another room and not.
Oh,
sorry. What'd you say?
I tabled the other questions, so we can close up.
Okay. Yeah, let's finish up. If there's like one more burning question, just, to wrap it up, like if you don't want to go the rest of the month without knowing, feel free to stick around. But otherwise we will call this an adjournment. Thank you guys so much for being here on your Friday night. We hope you have a great rest of your weekend. We'll be sending out an email with follow-up resources and the video as they come out. And we look forward to seeing you next time, which will be our fourth and final session for 2024. And that's going to be taking place on Saturday, November 16th, same time, same place. So that's an email reminder, and information about who our guest and our topic will be coming out shortly. Thank you so much. Stick around if you have a last minute question, especially for Dr. Lundahl, who is just joining us for today. See you guys.
Bye. Until next time. Hi, Annie. You're good.
Okay. Stick around. Okay.
Bye.
We did it. Or I'll stop the recording.
Tanya, thanks so much.